Welcome on and welcome back to Buckeyes Battle Cry. We appreciate you joining us today. Just me today, Peter. Rob traveling this weekend, so he's not able to join us for the wrap-up show here on week 2. So it's just going to be me today, but I hope you settle in, and we're going to talk about a lot of things. We've got, obviously, Ohio State, Western Michigan, as you see on the screen. We're going to go through the Big Ten Roundup again. Of course, Michigan's big loss to the Texas Longhorns in Ann Arbor. We're going to talk about Nebraska and Colorado. We're going to talk Oklahoma State, Arkansas, how crazy and zany that was. Tennessee shellacking and slamming the NC State Wolfpack. The ACC does not look to have a pulse. It's outside of Miami, Florida, maybe. And we'll tell. We'll see later. And they can be fool's gold for sure. So maybe they'll keep it going for the ACC conference, and that team is guaranteed to make the playoffs out of the ACC, the champion. Maybe it'll be Louisville, maybe Miami, Florida, but that's shaping up to be the conference championship game, and that was my prediction at the beginning of the season. Don't forget, Miami, Florida versus Louisville. So, yeah, interesting show. Of course, we're going to talk about some other national games that took place, and then the Heisman contenders after 2 weeks of college football. Super early, of course, to be discussing that, but always a fun topic for college football fans. Who has entered the race? Did anybody leave the race this weekend? Maybe a Colorado player or two. We'll talk about it. But first, obviously, the Ohio State Buckeyes took on the Western Michigan Broncos on the MAC conference, and it was over before this thing even kicked off. It really was. Total domination from the opening kick to the last player off the bench. They got some snaps. Sometimes these games can be fun to watch because you really do get a cleared bench and you get to see your walk-ons playing. Tyler Maggs took snaps, a walk-on quarterback for the Buckeyes yesterday. And it can be fun to see some of these young up-and-coming people that we just either got in the recruiting portal or who maybe never would have seen the field otherwise had it not been for an opponent like this. So some cool moments were created in this game, but let's break it down a little bit. My goodness, when you outgain a team 683 yards to 99, that's complete and utter domination in all facets of the game. All three phases of the game were dominant for Ohio State yesterday. And you expect them to be versus a team the caliber of Western Michigan. Now, Western Michigan is supposedly better than Akron, and so I expected a slightly better contest from them. But my goodness, Western Michigan, unfortunately, after a stellar performance in Madison the week prior at night in Madtown, Broncos gave the Badgers a little bit of a scare. Into the fourth quarter, they had a lead, but they were not competitive in this football game at all. I'm not very high in Wisconsin in general, but, man, after seeing what Western was able to do versus Wisconsin and then what Western was not capable of doing versus the Buckeyes, really kind of puts things in perspective a little bit. Now, the transitive property isn't always a thing you can apply in college football, but, my goodness, what a lackluster performance from the Broncos. And they obviously got a lot of things to work on. When you held on to 100 yards of total offense, your defense for Ohio State is not going to be on the field very often. So for the buck of the week this week, it's going to be a little tough to pick a defender, but I got one in mind. And, of course, offensively, everybody got some touches and some snaps in this game. So it was a lot of fun. Will Howard, he looked really calm, cool, and confident from the jump. Last week you could tell the first couple drives he was nervous playing in front of his new home crowd, his new home fans, and the jitters were there in the first couple of drives versus Akron. That was evident. It was very clear, but he was completely in control and just confident what he could do versus the Western Michigan defense. He went 18-26 for 292 yards, one touchdown through the air. That was, of course, the big play to J.J. Smith, the 70-yard hitch route that he just took to the house. And then he had the one rushing touchdown where he threw up the OH to the crowd right there. That was a great moment. Got some good photos out of that, of course. And you can tell he's loving being in Columbus, and he's feeling the love from the Buckeye faithful. And that is, it's a high-pressure position. Obviously, criticism is going to amp up as the competition increases for Ohio State. that's just how things are. I mean, outside of being a head coach, being the quarterback at Ohio State is very high pressure filled, and not everybody can handle that pressure. Steve Belisari comes to mind, Joe Bosman comes to mind, and a few others as well. So Howard had a good day. He really settled in. And, of course, we got to see Quinshon Judkins go over 100 yards, get 2 touchdowns. Travion Henderson had 2 touchdowns. And what was really cool was to see the rotation in the quarterback position. It's not something you always see under a day-led team. And we got to see, of course, Brown came in. He was 5 for 5. Julian Sain came in, got his first touchdown pass of what could potentially be many in a Buckeye uniform. Of course, the man from Carlsbad, California, the number 1 recruit at quarterback in his class, transferring from Alabama to Ohio State. And that paid dividends. He got some snaps and obviously got that long touchdown pass to a guy that will never have a moment like that, most likely again, in a Buckeye uniform. Bennett Christian, the tight end, I believe a walk-on, 56-yard touchdown pass or reception for him from Sain. What a moment for Bennett Christian. Probably lifelong dream for him, scoring in the horseshoe, and he got to accomplish that. And his teammates were all around him, celebrating him, hyping him up. And, of course, even Aaron Nolan came in and was dapping up Julian Sain for his touchdown pass, the first of his career. Like I said, hopefully of many to come. So there were some cool things, obviously, offensively that we witnessed. The offensive line seemed to dominate from the jump, and that was not the case versus the Akron Zips. They only averaged 4.8 yards per carry in the first half versus Akron last week, and then 5.5 in the second half. But from the jump, we were busting out huge runs, both Travion and Quinshon. Obviously, Quinshon had a much better average per rush this game. And so that was exciting to see him really burst on the scene after he had, I wouldn't call it a lackluster performance versus the Akron Zips in week 1, but we expected him to do a little more versus Akron, and he definitely showed out in game number 2. And of course, the Buckeyes going to be going to a bye week so early in the season. Now everybody gets 2 byes, and that's going to be an adjustment for us college football fans. Obviously, they're used to it in the NFL, but certainly a new thing for college football, although it has happened in odd years as well in the past. And so offensively, I mean, Ohio State did everything they wanted to do. Howard was very accurate. He was very deliberate with his decisions. He was confident in his decisions. There's only one criticism I have. As Buckeye fans, we're going to nitpick. It's just who we are, what we do. We expect and demand perfection. And his deep ball was talked about in the fall camp, and it's just not a strong suit in his game, despite being a big quarterback with a huge body, 6'4", 235 pounds. For whatever reason, the deep ball is just not in his arsenal, and that definitely showed out. J.J. Smith had gotten behind the defense, well beyond the defense, and Howard underthrew him pretty roughly, and, of course, it got broken up. So that was definitely a touchdown that came off the board. You're hoping to hit those in the big games, of course, versus the Iowas, the Oregons, the Michigans of the future opponents. And hopefully he can get better on those deep balls because, like I said, I heard that was a thing in his fall camp that he struggled with, and in his career at K-State as well. But a much more confident and calm and cool-looking quarterback. Will Howard, definitely a leader of the team. You can tell the team really respects him and really plays hard for him as well as for Coach Day, and that's an exciting thing to see as a Buckeye fan. Now, defensively, of course, like I said earlier, I mean, when you hold a team to 99 yards, you're getting off the field quickly. You're not getting a lot of defensive snaps. And so statistics just aren't going to be high for any player when you talk about it. But Jack Sawyer continues to perform. He continues to wreak havoc on these O-lines that he's facing, really growing in a position as defensive end since he transitioned away from the Jack position under Jim Knowles his first year. He's really growing up, man. He is really having a phenomenal start to the campaign and continuing what he did last year versus Missouri in his 3-sack performance in the bowl game. He's really taken off this year, and that's exciting to see. Caleb Downs made a couple plays today. He made his presence known a little bit more. I think he had 4 tackles last night for the Buckeyes. But my bucket of the week on the defensive side is Big Nasty inside, part of the TNT duo, if you will. That's their nickname, Tyreek and Ty Hamilton. Ty Hamilton was a force. He had a half a sack. He was just disruptive. He was getting in there. And if I had an honorable mention bucket of the week on defense, it'd be senior defensive tackle Caden McDonald. 327 pounds. He was a man-child yesterday versus Western Michigan. He took advantage of the snaps that he got, and they were limited, but boy, was he disruptive. He also got a half sack and a couple tackles for loss as well. And so that was fun to see big old Cade McDonald get in there and be disruptive. We're going to need him in the playoff stretch and possibly versus, teams that run better as a big, guy clogging up the defensive, the offensive line and just really making things messy for the offensive line. So that was fun. My bucket of the week for the offense, I do give it to Will Howard. I think, Quinshon Judkins had some really nice stats and some big plays for Ohio State. But, to see the quarterback calm down and be as confident as he was and be such a good decision maker in what he was doing for Ohio State offensively, he earns my bucket of the week, of course, and that was a phenomenal performance from him. And we expect, even better things to come as he gets more confident in the offense and the play calling and his role in the offense. It's going to be fun to see develop over the course of this season and how much better he can get in this offense as he gets comfortable with the scheme and his teammates. Certainly chemistry is developed. Every ball was pretty much on target except that deep shot, like I mentioned. So I say the dominating win, not a lot to talk about besides just complete dominance. I mean, seriously, like you go into the bye week off a 56-0 win, you're feeling pretty good. You're going to obviously, I think Ohio State is going to look ahead perhaps to the Oregon game. And we'll talk about the Oregon Ducks in just a little bit here in the Big Ten roundup section. But clearly, Oregon is not off to the best start, but they're still a formidable opponent. And it's our first road game of the season. And so it'll be first time where hearing plays in the helmets is going to be a little bit more challenging for the offense and for the defense because of the crowd noise and the volume. Austin, one of the loudest stadiums in college football. So I think the bye week was to be spent a little bit of time with Michigan, a little bit of time with Oregon. Marshall's not exactly somebody you need to do a ton of prep for. Obviously, you focus on them on the week of the game, and you don't take any opponent lightly. But the Marshall Thunder and Herd are not going to be very competitive in this upcoming football game on the 21st either. So moving on to the Big Ten roundup section, obviously there were some interesting games this weekend in the Big Ten Conference. The Texas Longhorns rode into town on their steers, and my goodness gracious, did they put a thumping on the Michigan Wolverines. My goodness. I mean, this team, let's just tell it like it is. Michigan is not the same program. They are not the same team that they were the last 3 years. There are certain programs, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, that reload, and every year you're going to get their best shot and they're going to have a dominant team. Michigan is just not a program that reloads. Yes, they had a good 3-year run, and yes, Aiden Hutchinson did graduate in 2021, and they continued for 2 years after that. But the recruiting is very clear and evident that developing these underwhelming recruits that Michigan has been getting is not going to be a thing that's continued under this current regime. I think the Wolverines have a lot of work to do, both offensively at quarterback. Davis Warren, he's a great story, fought off leukemia. He's somebody that's easy to root for as a human being from a human perspective. But as a quarterback, he is very limited. He's slow in his decision making, and he's inaccurate in his easy throws are not on target. And that's a big problem for an offense that doesn't have too many weapons outside of Colson Loveland. Colson Loveland is a certified bona fide first rounder. He's going to go in the first round of the NFL draft. He's that good as a tight end. He's a Brock Bowers type. He's a TJ Hawkinson type. He's very good. But when he's your only option, wow. I mean, Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris, like, they are not creating separation. The only routes that they're effective are on their crossing routes because they're that fast. I'm not sure why they haven't sent them deep yet, probably because they're not big enough to fight off the line. And when they get jammed on man-to-man coverage, they're small receivers. They're small, shifty guys. And they don't have a Cornelius Johnson. They don't have a Roman Wilson anymore. I mean, wow, the recruiting at wide receiver has been really, really poor for the Wolverines. And it's extremely jarring to see the Michigan wideouts just not getting any kind of separation from the defenders, even versus Fresno State in week 1. Outside of Loveland, your top receiver had 15 yards, and that's a problem in big games. The offensive line is still not winning battles. This is an offensive line that obviously has 5 brand new starters, but 2 players from the portal have great experience starting in other offenses. This smash concept is not seem to be working. It seems like a gimmick, just like Speed and Space was for Josh Gaddis. It's just a slogan. It's just a mantra. It's not reality. They're not imposing their will like they've done very effectively in their 40-3 run over the last 3 seasons. But they are not capable of that anymore. This team is not capable of smash football. Now they're going to get better. Offensive lines grow tremendously throughout a season. And Ohio State is going to face an offensive line that is better than the one that Texas just faced and better than the one that Fresno State faced. So I keep that in mind. So I'm not trying to sound extremely, overconfident and arrogant in my analysis of the Wolverines offensively, but they are inept. Like Kirk Campbell, he came from Old Dominion to Michigan. Like, that's a huge jump, a massive jump, and it doesn't appear like he's creative enough to get down to Edwards in space. He's moving Loveland around, and that's a cool thing, but that's because he's literally their only weapon offensively. They have to find different ways to get Warren the ball. The orgy package needs to be completely scrapped. Everybody knows exactly what's coming. It's just like the Pepcat formation back when Jabril Peppers was running it. Everybody knew what was coming, a run, and everybody stopped it. And they're wasted downs. They're burned downs. And Texas was not fooled by anything that the orgy package was trying to deliver. My goodness. That package needs to be scrapped. It's clear they don't trust him to throw the football. He would have thrown more than 2 passes in the 2 games that he's played now. He has a 48% completion percentage in high school. And it's clear the staff does not trust him to throw the football. And so I think Orgy will probably be in the portal. I mean, my goodness. And it'll probably go to a lower level program. But yeah, he needs to stop getting on the field, or maybe the opposite, give him a series. That's what I hear some Michigan fans clamoring for, because they know Davis Warren's not the answer. Defensively, this was the biggest surprise. I mean, Quinn Ewers and the Texas offense, especially on that first drive, they converted 3 of 3 long, 3rd and longs, and that was amazing to see the calm and poise of an experienced starter in Quinn Ewers. If anybody's still calling for Arch Manning after this performance, after Bama last year, and shoot, even Washington in the playoffs, he played fairly well. If anybody's still calling for Arch Manning, you don't know what you're looking at. You got a superstar quarterback in your hands, and wow, what a talent Quinn Ewers is. He's really playing himself possibly into a higher draft pick, I would say. He's going to be challenging Carson Beck for that number 1 overall selection come April next season. But the Longhorns have a lot of goals on their hands. I mean, they were completing these passes. Ewers, when pressure came, he would just step up or scramble to his right a little bit, scramble to his left a little bit, and just throw a dart. He was very accurate on the move and on the run. He's completely comfortable throwing the football while moving, and Michigan had no answers. Will Johnson didn't get picked on nearly as much as Fresno State did, but it didn't matter because they spread the ball around. Isaiah Bond was a target. The tight end, number 85, was a serious weapon for the Longhorns. He absolutely destroyed Michigan's defense. It was amazing. Like I initially, this is my initial impression. Texas drove down the field, converted 3 third and longs, and then converted a 4th one. But got called back for a holding call. A call that I thought was a little weak, but I was like, all right, well, whatever. Maybe they'll settle for 3. Well, they missed the field goal. I said, oh boy. Michigan played about as poor defensively on 3rd down as they could have, and Texas drove down the field in a long drive, but a drive that you weren't giving up hope yet on the Michigan defense after drive 1, and Michigan held them to 0 points. And then Michigan turns the ball over. Or no, it was a short punt, and then the Longhorns go right back down and get the 7 points anyway that they missed out on the first possession. And I said, wow, is this Michigan defense actually going to let up these big passing plays? And they're getting gashed in the running game too. The other thing I didn't understand from the Michigan defense, they were moving Mason Graham around all over on the defensive line, and it did not make sense to me. They're putting a defensive end. They're lining up at different defensive tackle positions. Dude, here's your stud, superstar, 300-pound, All-American defensive lineman. Why are you putting him at defensive end? Maybe they're trying to get cute and outthink Texas, but every time Michigan put him on the edge, they just ran away from him to the other side of the line and got big yardage. Instead of clogging up the middle and blowing up a play in the backfield and blowing up an offensive guard or center like Mason Graham is known for doing, they had him completely useless and out of the play, and Texas called it perfectly. When they saw where he lined up, they went the opposite way. And Texas really exploited that. I'm not sure what Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator for the Wolverines in his first year, was thinking, moving him around the line. But, wow. Yeah, Texas offensive line versus Michigan's D-line. That was the battle everybody wanted to watch. That was strength on strength, and we were going to see who was going to come out on top of this matchup based on who wins more battles in the trenches in this football game. In Texas, I can't believe it, but I mean, they dominated Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, and Mason Graham. I mean, they just pushed them around and schemed around them. I mean, they completely took Mason Graham out of the game with this quick pass attack football game to the sidelines that they were playing. And they were running to the outside when Mason Graham was lined up inside. And they completely took these behemoth Michigan defensive tackles out of the game plan, out of the game in general, and just Sark drew up a wonderful scheme for this football game, and Texas really exploited Michigan's deficiencies on defense. In this Wolverine defense, another thing I want to harp on Michigan is that this is a team that has tackled the ball carriers extremely well over the past 3 seasons. They were not missing many tackles. They just weren't. In these first 2 games, but specifically in the Texas game, a lot of missed tackles. Jair Hill was really picked on at cornerback 2 for the Wolverines. They were going after him relentlessly, and not to bash the kid, but he was getting exposed out there. He really was, and he missed some big tackles. He gave up some big plays, even back-to-back plays sometimes. Texas was definitely exploiting him. They said, okay, we'll just won't throw Will Johnson. We'll move Isaiah Bond around. We'll move our big tight end around and see what we can do. And boy, did it work. I mean, it seemed like they knew exactly what Michigan was going to do. And, wow, what an offensive performance. I mean, Quinn Ewers put up 292 yards and I'm sorry. Wait, no, that was Will Howard's stats. I didn't write Ewers' stats on, actually, but I know he played exceptionally well. It was around 300 yards passing. Just just that savvy vet experience on the road, man. They can't be replaced. I mean, that's so important to have that veteran experience and calm demeanor back there. High State's got that in Will Howard. Now, Will Howard is not as good as Quinn Ewers. I'm not saying that in the least bit, but to have a heady, knowledgeable, smart, good decision maker, and let's be honest, a playmaker like Ewers had and Texas has. I mean, man, what a huge benefit that is to a college football team to have someone you can trust in a pressure situation. Honestly, they took the crowd out of it quickly because after that Colson Loveland turnover right before the half, the fumble, the self-inflicted fumble, Texas took it right down and scored. And when they scored to make it 24-3, I mean, the game was effectively over with what Michigan's offense is capable of. I said that in the text chat with Rob and my buddy Matt. I said, that's it. Nail in the coffin, man. That's game. 24-3. Michigan is not coming back from this. And they didn't show much life after that. They fought a little bit, and, of course, they scored against the backups for Texas. Davis Warren was still in there trying to sling the ball around. He made some impressive throws in the end of the game, but the game was well in control and well over by that point that Warren was making plays with his arm. So that's it. Michigan comes in overranked at 10. They dropped to 17th in the polls. Texas announces themselves as a big-time and serious contender along with Georgia and Ohio State. And now it's time to talk a little bit about the Oregon Ducks, man. Oregon, for the second week in a row versus an Idaho team, my goodness, not looking up to par, not looking the part, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, Dylan Gabriel, this is the kind of confusing thing. The game was on far too late for me to be conscious and stay away again. Plus, I don't have Peacock anyway. But I did get some highlights. Now, Gabriel's stats in both games look really good. I mean, he was 18 of 21 in this football game for over 200 yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns total. Like, he had good performances, but the Ducks turned it over twice to Boise State's 0 turnovers. Oregon had 9 penalties for 74 yards. So Oregon really struggled in that aspect of the game too, a little bit undisciplined. And then, let's be honest, man, Boise State outrushed Oregon 221 yards to 110 for Oregon. Ashton Gianti, I want to talk about him later in this broadcast here before I wrap things up, the Heisman section. But Ashton Gianti came in, he had 192 yards and 3 touchdowns for Ashton Gianti. Dude is phenomenal. He's leading the nation in rushing right now, I believe. He was just phenomenal. Like, what is going on with Oregon though? They opened the season at number 3, and after 2 very underwhelming performances versus the Idaho Vandals and the Boise State Broncos last night, they dropped all the way down to 9 without even losing the game. But looking nothing like what everybody predicted. I mean, Desmond Howard and Kirk Herbstreit picked the Oregon Ducks to win the national title. And I'm not saying that those dreams are dashed. I mean, they're undefeated still, but this does not look like a team that's going to compete for a national championship. And my confidence level in the game for Ohio State going out there on October 12th is rising exponentially. This is a game I checked up as a loss for Ohio State coming into the season before I saw these 2 teams play. But my goodness, after reassessing after 2 weeks, I'm feeling a lot better about how that trip to Austin Stadium might go in Eugene, Oregon. It's gonna be a fun game to watch no matter what. I know Oregon fans are gonna get up for it. It's gonna be a rowdy atmosphere, but right now Oregon looks lackluster defensively. They are moving the ball between the 20s offensively, but for whatever reason, they're not putting a lot of points on the board. Now, 37 is decent, of course, but 1 was a kick return for a touchdown as well, so don't forget that. But Boise State was winning this game in the 4th quarter in Eugene, and I think Ohio State's going to cause them some problems when we visit out there on October 12th. So something to keep your eye on, but the Oregon Ducks continue to underperform. Dylan Gabriel putting up stats, but the Ducks as a whole just don't look all that inspired right now. Dan Lanning, you have to figure some things out and see what they can do to get this ship going in the right direction. Obviously got a lot of time before that Ohio State game, more than a month to prepare. Things could drastically change and be different by then. But after 2 weeks, that's just my initial impression of Oregon. They don't look quite like the national title contender that everybody expected them to be to open the season. A couple of the Big Ten games I want to just quickly touch on here, and briefly. Illinois in what I would consider an upset win over 19th ranked Kansas at home in Champaign-Urbana. Phenomenal win, man. The fans stormed the field. Being a ranked team for the first time in quite some time, that was phenomenal to watch the scenes in Champaign as Illinois fans get to celebrate for once. So that's always fun to see. I had Kansas as a potential Big 12 contender, and maybe they still are. Maybe Illinois has just improved a lot under Brett Bielema. But an impressive win for the Fighting Illini, and hats off and hat tip to them. Of course, Colorado and Nebraska, the old rivalry, the old Big 12 rivalry. The Huskers, man, wow. Dylan Raiola looks completely under control. He does not look like a true freshman quarterback. I can't say I'm rooting for the kid, but he is a fun story. He's definitely looking like he'll be a star for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And one of the best quarterbacks since perhaps Eric Crouch, the Heisman Trophy winner back in 2001. Nebraska absolutely blasts the Buffs back into reality. 28-10 the final in Lincoln in that one. And Colorado didn't belong in this game at all. I mean, they looked like they didn't belong. They completely outclassed in every phase of the game. Shedeur Sanders threw a pick six that he had no business even throwing the ball. Not only had 3 interceptions last year, but what a turnover that was. That was a really ill-advised throw. I don't know what he was thinking or what he saw on that play. Just a 5-yard pick six for the Nebraska defense. And, hey, man, look out for Nebraska. I heard people saying it before the season. They might be 7-0 coming to Columbus. We shall see. They don't have too many tests before they march into Columbus, but that could be a ranked versus ranked matchup that only a few people saw coming before the season. I had Nebraska probably entering the horseshoe at 5-2 or 6-1, depending on how certain contests go. But we will see just what they're made of. Obviously, a lot of football to be played between now and the matchup with the Huskers in Columbus. But an impressive start for Matt Rule's squad. Good win. Fans got to storm the field in that one as well, and you'd love to see that. A wonderful part of college football. Let's talk about a struggle win. Penn State and Bowling Green didn't quite go down to the wire, but Bowling Green led at halftime, I believe. And they played Penn State pretty even. Drew Allar took a step back from his performance in Morgantown in week 1 versus the Mountaineers. It really came back down to earth a little bit. Obviously, I was not paying too close attention to this football game. I don't know a ton of the storylines on this one. I just know Bowling Green was competitive throughout the contest, and the MAC almost had 2 top 10 wins on Saturday. They do fall short, obviously, in this one. The Falcons in Happy Valley. 34-27 the final there. Penn State survives and escapes, just as Oregon survived Boise State. There would have been two pretty bad losses for the conference to swallow. But overall, pretty good day for the Big Ten outside of the biggest game, of course, and the one that people paid the most attention to, Michigan dropping the ball in the Big House. Versus the Longhorns. But interesting day in the Big Ten. Those are the games I wanted to hit on from a Big Ten perspective. Now switching gears to the national landscape, of course. A couple of the games I want to talk about. Tennessee, how about the Vols, man? Nico Iamaleava, my goodness gracious. 51-10, they take out the 24th ranked NC State Wolfpack. Don't know if NC State will sniff the top 25 the rest of the year. It is a weak ACC, though, and so they could find their way being ranked again at some point in the 20 to 25 range. But the Volunteers went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and absolutely dropped an A-bomb on them. And it was, wow, what a performance last night in Charlotte for Tennessee. Josh Heupel's squad is really impressing me early on. You got to start taking him seriously as a potential contender for the SEC championship game. We're going to see how they perform versus Alabama. That game is looming, of course, in October. It should be a fantastic showdown. There's some big matchups still to come, obviously, but Tennessee passing the early test with flying colors. They knock off a ranked team and notch a ranked W in week 2 here. And, of course, an interesting game on the opposite side for the newly minted SEC member, the Oklahoma Sooners, not looking so hot under Brent Venables, hanging on to beat the Houston Cougars 16-12. Certainly a lackluster performance from the quarterback and from the offense in general, but to be so close in a tight contest with Houston, an American Athletic Conference team, that is that's a big mark on the resume for Brent Venables and what he's capable of in his first year in the SEC. Obviously, a lot of people don't have high expectations for Oklahoma entering year 1 in this new conference. And, man, after that performance last night, I think those prognosticators are kind of on cue. Another interesting – it was an interesting game, but it was a sloppy game. Wow. Oklahoma State and Arkansas go to double overtime. Sam Pittman's job is kind of on the line this season. This would have been a huge victory over a potential Big 12 contender. I've slotted them in the Big 12 championship game. But sloppy all over in this football contest. It really was highly entertaining, but highly dysfunctional. 39-31, Oklahoma State escapes. The SEC notches a loss there in that game. And it was, wow. I mean, what can I say? I mean, defense was questionable. It was optional for large portions of this game. You know, kind of typical Big 12 style game is what you saw, really. And Arkansas falls in this one in double OT. Really, either team could have easily won this game. I mean, both teams seemed like they wanted to give it away, and neither team wanted to snatch victory and claim it. But ultimately, of course, the Cowboys, the Pokes, get the victory and remain undefeated here early in the season. Maybe not as formidable as I was thinking they might be, or maybe they just had an off day and took the foot off the gas a little bit. But Oklahoma State does survive Arkansas in double OT. And then to wrap up the show, of course, I do want to talk about the Heisman contenders. Now, Travis Hunter, both Rob and I last week, kind of proclaimed him as perhaps being the front runner after a dominant performance against North Dakota State. Just completely took over the game. And I didn't have close tabs on this football contest last night because Ohio State was playing at night. But I was watching it with the YouTube TV, obviously multi-screen that you get. You can watch 4 games at a time. And during commercials for Ohio State, I would at least put the audio on that game and sometimes go to big screen for the Colorado-Nebraska game. And Travis Hunter just wasn't as nearly as effective in this contest. He didn't look as engaged. This is just an outsider's perspective, but, he seemed to slip a little bit in the Heisman rankings, if you will. Now, a person that completely continues to dominate college football in the early season, who I would probably name the front runner at this point in the season, Cam Ward, quarterback of Miami, Florida. I mean, he only played about a half of football, but he had 317 yards and 4 touchdowns. Another, just stat machine, video game numbers in his second consecutive week. And he seems to be emerging as a potential front runner. Now, obviously, Quinn Ewers had some Heisman moments in a big game. I don't think he's going to be a stat machine for the Texas Longhorn offense. He's got too much talent and being able to spread the ball around and different numbers will take away. But if he continues to get big victories, if they're to beat Georgia and he has some more similar Heisman moments, look out for Quinn Ewers. He definitely put himself on the map. I predicted my Heisman finalists in a video earlier this offseason, who I thought was going to be in New York. Quinn Ewers was not one of them for the reasons that he doesn't put up gaudy stats. But sometimes it's not always about stats. It is about quality moments in big games. And Quinn Ewers definitely performed exceptionally well in the big house yesterday. Now, it was a very quiet crowd, and, obviously started loud. They got a false start on the first drive because of the crowd noise. But my goodness, Quinn Ewers really shut that crowd up and quickly with his performance and his skills they put on display. And, of course, the other guy, Ashton Johnson, man, continues to ball out. I'm not going to pretend that a Boise State running back is going to win the Heisman Trophy. That's just not realistic. But my goodness, if he continues to put up stats like this, averaging over 200 yards a game. I mean, he had 267 in the opener, 192 last night. He could have a 2,000-yard season, especially in Mountain West Conference play, as Boise State's offensive line just looks dominant. And he might get an invite. He truly might. So those are my three guys that performed super well this week. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's show, the College Football Recap Show. Thanks for joining in. Obviously, Rob will join me next week as we wrap up week 3. Buckeyes are off, as we know, but we will be here for Champs and Chumps Show week 3 recap next Sunday as well. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow to Team Rivalry, Big Ten Team Rivalry. Rob and I will be on the guest panel picking the best Big Ten games of the upcoming week and recapping a little bit of the weekend's previous games. So don't forget to join Big Ten Team Rivalry tomorrow, as we'll be guest panels on that show, picking the contests and the scores of each Big Ten game. Of course, Bama and Wisconsin, the headlining the Big Ten landscape this upcoming weekend, and we're looking forward to that one in Madtown. Probably going to be a blowout, but I'm not going to give anything away just yet. But I think I don't know. Wisconsin's got some issues to work through for sure. But that's going to do it for tonight. Thanks for joining in. We appreciate you all. And you'll see us throughout the week, obviously talking about the week that was in college football and the weekend to come in college football. But, yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Go Bucks and God bless. Have a good night, everybody.